The Nativity of Jesus, Nativity of Christ, birth of Christ or birth of Jesus is described in the Gospels of Luke and Matthew. The two accounts differ, but agree that Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. His mother Mary was married to a man named Joseph, who was descended from King David and was not his biological father, and that his birth was caused by divine intervention. Luke's version says the birth took place during the census of Quirinius, mentions an annunciation to the shepherds, the presentation of Jesus at the temple, and gives the name of the angel who announces the coming birth to Mary, the archangel Gabriel. Matthew's version mentions the arrival of the Magi, the flight into Egypt by the family, and the massacre of the innocents by King Herod. The consensus of scholars is that both Gospels were written about AD 75 to 85, and while it is possible that one account might be based on the other, or that the two share common source material, the majority conclusion is that the two nativity narratives are independent of each other. The Nativity is the basis for the Christian holiday of Christmas and plays a major role in the Christian liturgical year. Christian congregations of the Western tradition, including the Catholic Church, the Western Rite Orthodox, the Anglican Communion, and many other Protestants, such as the Moravian Church, begin observing the season of Advent 4 Sundays before Christmas, the traditional feast day of his birth, which falls on December 25. Christians of the Eastern Orthodox Church and Oriental Orthodox Church observe a similar season, sometimes called Advent but also called the Nativity Fast, which begins 40 days before Christmas. Some Eastern Orthodox Christians, e.g. Greeks and Syrians, celebrate Christmas on December 25. Other Orthodox, e.g. Copts, Ethiopians, Georgians, and Russians, celebrate Christmas on the Gregorian, January 7, Kuyuk 29 on the Coptic calendar, as a result of their churches continuing to follow the Julian calendar, rather than the modern-day Gregorian calendar. The artistic depiction of the Nativity has been an important subject for Christian artists since the 4th century. Artistic depictions of the nativity scene since the 13th century have emphasized the humility of Jesus and promoted a more tender image of him, as a major turning point from the early Lord and Master image, mirroring changes in the common approaches taken by Christian pastoral ministry. The date of birth for Jesus of Nazareth is not stated in the Gospels or in any secular text, but a majority of scholars assume a date between 6 BC and 4 BC. The historical evidence is too ambiguous to allow a definitive dating, but the date has been estimated through known historical events mentioned in the Gospels of Luke chapter 2 and Matthew, or by working backwards from the estimated start of the ministry of Jesus. Luke chapter 2 verse 1 states that Jesus was born when Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All that is generally accepted is that Jesus was born before 4 BC, the year of Herod's death. The Gospels of both Matthew and Luke place the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. Although Matthew does not explicitly state Joseph's place of origin or where he lived prior to the birth of Jesus, the account implies that the family lived in Bethlehem, and explains that they later settled in Nazareth. However, Luke chapter 1 verses 26 to 27 clearly states that Mary lived in Nazareth before the birth of Jesus, at the time of the Annunciation. The Gospel of Luke states that Mary gave birth to Jesus and placed him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn, but does not say exactly where Jesus was born. The Greek word kataluma may be translated as either inn or guest room, and some scholars have speculated that Joseph and Mary may have sought to stay with relatives, rather than at an inn, only to find the house full, whereupon they resorted to the shelter of a room with a manger. This could be a place to keep the sheep within the Bethlehem area, called Migdal Eder, Tower of Flock, as prophesied by prophet Micah in Micah chapter 4 verse 8. In the 2nd century, Justin Martyr stated that Jesus had been born in a cave outside the town, while the Protoevangelium of James described a legendary birth in a cave nearby. The Church of the Nativity inside the town, built by Saint Helena, contains the cave manger site traditionally venerated as the birthplace of Jesus, which may have originally been a site of the cult of the god Tammuz. In Contra Celsum 1.51, Origen, who from around 215 traveled throughout Palestine, wrote of the manger of Jesus. The theological significance of the Nativity of Jesus has been a key element in Christian teachings, from the early Church Fathers to 20th-century theologians. The theological issues were addressed as early as Apostle Paul, but continued to be debated and eventually lead to both Christological and Mariological differences among Christians that resulted in early schisms within the Church by the 5th century. Paul the Apostle viewed the birth of Jesus as an event of cosmic significance which brought forth a new man, who undid the damage caused by the fall of the first man, Adam. Just as the Johannine view of Jesus as the incarnate Logos proclaims the universal relevance of his birth, the Pauline perspective emphasizes the birth of a new man and a new world in the birth of Jesus. Paul's eschatological view of Jesus positions him as a new man of morality and obedience, in contrast to Adam. Unlike Adam, the new man born in Jesus obeys God and ushers in a world of morality and salvation. In the Pauline view, Adam is positioned as the first man and Jesus as the second. Adam, having corrupted himself by his disobedience, also infected humanity and left it with a curse as inheritance. The birth of Jesus, on the other hand, counterbalanced the fall of Adam, bringing forth redemption and repairing the damage done by Adam. In the 2nd century Church Father Irenaeus writes, "When he became incarnate and was made man, he commenced afresh the long line of human beings, and furnished us, in a brief, comprehensive manner, with salvation, so that what we had lost in Adam, namely to be according to the image and likeness of God, that we might recover in Christ Jesus." Irenaeus was also one of the early theologians to use the analogy of second Adam and second Eve. He suggested the Virgin Mary as the second Eve, and wrote that the Virgin Mary had untied the knot of sin bound up by the Virgin Eve, and that just as Eve had tempted Adam to disobey God, Mary had set a path of obedience for the second Adam, i.e. Jesus, from the Annunciation to Calvary so that Jesus could bring about salvation, undoing the damage of Adam.